Let's talk about the top running back handcuffs next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm flying solo today, and we are talking about the top running back handcuffs. On these Saturday shows, we usually try to have Dan Schneier on. We talk about beat the waiver wire targets, guys who we think could be, one big game away from being the next big thing on the waiver wire. However, with the fantasy playoffs here, I think the focus has to shift a little bit because we're looking now not just for upside. We're not just looking for stash candidates who have upside. We're looking for guys who specifically have, I think, insurance for injuries if they happen in the playoffs, and that upside that we're looking for, the Ezekiel Elliott on Thursday night type of situations where when it comes to running back specifically, often an injury is all it takes for a guy to get into a 20 touch per game role. And so what we're going to do over the next few minutes is talk about the top waiver wire handcuff running backs for you to look for if they're available in your leagues. I wrote about this for the FFT newsletter earlier this week. Go check that out on cbssports.com. But we'll start with, I think, the top handcuff is not even really a handcuff. I think it's Tyjae Spears, who has had a role all season as the passing downs back for the Titans, has actually played more snaps than Derrick Henry 5 times already this season, which, if you know anything about Derrick Henry's usage over the past couple of years, that never happened before this season. Tyjae Spears is a really, really talented running back who clearly, I think the concerns about his knee maybe in the long term caused him to drop in the draft, but this is a really, really talented back who has looked really good in this offense. So he's someone, if he's available in your league, absolutely needs to be stashed, because if anything happens to Derrick Henry, Tyjae Spears could be a top 15 running back. Elijah Mitchell is another high priority waiver wire running back to look for this week. Not necessarily because anything's happened to Christian McCaffrey. There hasn't been. Actually, Elijah Mitchell hasn't practiced this week as he continues to deal with lingering knee issues. But if he's healthy and something happens to Christian McCaffrey, we've seen how good Elijah Mitchell can be. He averaged 100 yards per game from scrimmage as a rookie, had 5 touchdowns in, I think, 9 games, 15 PPR points per game. He's someone who, if anything happens to Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell figures to be a must-start fantasy running back. And if he's not healthy, well, Jordan Mason, I guess, probably doesn't have as much upside, but he's definitely someone to consider as well. Rico Dowdle from the Cowboys is my third priority among the RB handcuffs. We've seen him look pretty good in this offense. I don't think he's a particularly talented running back, but he's looked good as the change of pace to Tony Pollard. And obviously this situation is just one of the best in football for a running back. And it's why it's been so frustrating that Tony Pollard hasn't had a better season, because the opportunities have been there. Tons of opportunities near the goal line, especially. Dowdle, if something happened to Pollard, probably a top 15 running back as well. My number 4 is kind of an interesting one because we don't know. Antonio Gibson might be the starting running back for the Commanders in Week 15. We just don't know. Brian Robinson left their Week 13 game with a hamstring injury, but they're on a bye this week. So that's where it gets complicated, because if Robinson ends up missing multiple weeks and he comes back in Week 15 and he's not ready to play, Gibson could be someone who's in line for 10 plus carries, 4 to 6 targets in that Commanders offense, and could be a solid RB2. Chris Rodriguez, the rookie, would also likely take on some of the early down stuff from Brian Robinson, but I think Gibson would be the guy to have there. And obviously with Robinson already injured, that makes a clearer path even with the bye this week. Tyler Algier, we've seen him, another one, we've seen him be very, very good as a rookie for fantasy. Not quite an RB1, but a solid starting option. If anything happens to Bijan Robinson, we're going to see some Cordell Patterson. We're going to see Patterson get a handful of carries, maybe some passing downs work. But Tyler Algier, if anything happened to Bijan Robinson, would be a 15 to 18 touch per game guy and a solid RB2. The next one, number 6, I have Kendre Miller for the Saints, and he's not the direct backup to Alvin Kamara. Jamal Williams isn't. And one thing we see a lot in the NFL is when you have multiple backup running backs, Jamal Williams has his role. He's going to get early down work. He gets a little bit right now, but if anything happened to Kamara, obviously, I think he'd be in line for 12 to 15 touches. But that passing role that Alvin Kamara takes on in this offense, I'd be surprised if Jamal Williams was the guy. We saw a couple games where Jamal Williams was the starting running back, and he didn't really have a big passing game role. So I think Kendre Miller has a better opportunity to be that Alvin Kamara, not Alvin Kamara replacement, obviously, but a guy who takes on a little more of the passing work and could be more valuable with a bigger upside than Jamal Williams. Let's run through the rest of the top 12 very quickly. I'm not going to go into every player, but Dearness Johnson and Tank Bigsby as the Travis Etienne replacements. This one's tough just because we don't know who is the guy if Travis Etienne goes down, but we know Etienne's been playing through some injuries recently. He has a rib injury right now. So if anything happens to him, it's a good offense. I lean towards Dearness Johnson, but Tank Bigsby might have more upside because of the goal line work. Jaleel McLaughlin, we've seen him be very good in this offense, so I don't have any problem saying him. Chase Brown for the Bengals finally popped last week for them. If anything happens to Joe Mixon, obviously that offense isn't as good without Joe Burrow, but could still be a good situation for Chase Brown. Royce Freeman with the Rams, he's also looked good when he's had the opportunities this season, and we've seen Kyron Williams suffer 2 high ankle sprains in his NFL career over 2 seasons, so that's something to keep in mind. This one's a little more speculative. Leonard Fournette with the Bills, still on the practice squad. It's another situation where Latavius Murray has his role for the Bills, and if something happened to James Cook, I don't think Latavius Murray is going to start getting passing downs work. I think he's still, 8 to 12 carries, goal line work. Fournette has the potential to be the more direct James Cook replacement. So I would actually prioritize stashing him for some upside over Latavius Murray. And then Joshua Kelly, who might see an increased role this week, according to what the Chargers talked about with Austin Eckler struggling in the running game. They could see if Joshua Kelly can spark it. Look, he had 13.1 total PPR points in 3 games that Austin Eckler missed earlier this season, so I'm not going to get super excited about the prospect of Joshua Kelly, but if this offense gets going, there could be more goal line opportunities. Joshua Kelly has been a decent option in the past, so he's someone to consider with one of your last bench spots, and that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll see you tomorrow for more Week 14 previews.